busy. I couldn't really work on anything.
Are we on her computer behind me, so she says she'll be quiet.
We'll hold her to that.
Mind you, she can't hear you. If she could, my microphone would be echoing. So.
Oh yeah, I figured I would have yelled at her otherwise.
Leo said he figured, or he would have yelled at you otherwise. Mind you, she can't. She's still smiling. I don't know if she heard any of that.
Well, I yelled at her in a good way. I say that a lot just to be like. Yelled at her in a good way.
He said, "Well, I yelled at her in a good way." He said, "Well, Okay, well.
Are we all ready now, Joe?
Yep.
Are you ready? Right. Everyone ready to press record when I go?
Yeah, let's do that. 20 seconds of silence.
Yeah, 20 seconds of silence after we start the recording, including you, young Josh.
Yeah, I'll remember. I'll remember this time. Yeah.
Let's not beat him up here, Tony.
No. I'm just saying. It'll make Joe's job easier to cancel out any extraneous noise because I'm not editing this time.
Okay. Whenever.
3, 2, 1, record. Lovely.
All
hey,
right.
And we didn't get any trucks going by.
I actually left it on as well.
Nice.
Are we going to do the 3, 2, 1, 0 for lining up the tracks as well?
Sure thing.
When you're ready.
Do I press the intro music on 0?
No. This is just to line up the tracks.
Okay.
When we're ready to go. 3, 2, 1, 0.
0. That was mostly together.
I think so. Over to you, Leo, as the show lead.
All right. I think we're good.
Shall I press play?
I think my head's still not screwed on all the way, but you know what? Let's just wing it. Press play! Welcome to mintCast, episode 311. Live stream information is at mintcast.org/livestream. We're in the mintCast channel in IRC at irc.spotchat.org. If you see something that you'd like to hear about, tell us. Send us an email at mintcast@mintcast.org. Join us on MeWe, Facebook, the mintCast subreddit. Chat with us on Telegram, Discord, or post directly at mintcast.org. We're recording on Sunday, June 16th, 2019. And I'm Leo, and with me this week are Joe.
Hello.
Moss.
Hi, gang.
Josh.
Hello.
And Tony.
Hi, guys.
And we're recording live on Sunday, June 16th, 2019. First up in our wanderings, I have to rebuild my network. Moss becomes more reliant on Linux Mint. Joe games on Atari. Josh gets nominated for awards and installs Deepin. And Tony Hughes gets scammed. Then in our news, Firefox protects everyone and lots of new releases. In our innards, we talk secure connections. And finally, we wrap up the show with lots of feedback and a couple of recommendations.
Leo, before we go any further,
yes.
Did Josh start the live stream? Because I just tried to log on.
Yeah, it's all there.
Oh, right, okay. I'm just checking.
Hey, Joe, cut this part out.
Why would I do that?
Nah, you can't do that.
All right. Well, for our wanderings this fortnight, I had a lot of stuff go on, and half of the stuff was not I didn't do it on purpose. So let's start with the good stuff. I got a 64 gig SD card because I was saying the last show that I was playing around with Batacera, and I was using one of my, I guess it's like a work flash drive. I use it to transfer files and stuff, so I couldn't dedicate it to this laptop anymore, that HP Stream I was using last time. So I had to get something new. I got a Patriot V30A1. And the read speeds on that thing were like 80 megabytes per second. The write speeds were like 30, 40 megabytes a second. So it was a really fast SD card. I got Batacera on there in just a couple of minutes and popped it into the HP Stream. And when it booted up, the SD card wasn't an option. So I was like, no way. I go in the BIOS and think, maybe it's in here. Surely it's in here. It was not in there. There was no way that I could find to boot an SD card. So defeated, I get back on Amazon and order a flash drive, 64 gig. So I got me a SanDisk Cruiser Fit, and it was about the same speed, 8040. And it was really good. So I expected about the same performance. And that one worked like a charm. So, that HP Stream needs to be able to boot from SD cards. Maybe I'll go and find a BIOS update that enables it or something, but I'm not holding my breath. But those Cruiser Fits are small enough that they just kind of like cover up the USB hole. So, yeah, I think I'm just going to stick with that. That's good. One of the other things that I did this past fortnight was I learned about this utility called PAVU Control. I've taken to calling it PAVU Control. I don't know what you actually call it, but it's the Pulse Audio Volume Control applet. And in the main Linux Mint sound settings, there's no way to take your microphone from 100% to above. And with my setup, I can maybe, if I yell into the mic without clipping, I can get to about negative 18 decibels. And that is not enough. You have to pretty much edit every single time you do anything. So by using PAVU Control, I can bring that up to about 130%. And then there's much less editing and tweaking you have to do. So I know that that's not great on the audio quality thing, but since I have to crank it up in Audacity anyway, it doesn't really matter. So this will be the first show that I'm trying it out on, so we'll see how it plays off. So if my audio quality is absolutely abysmal today, I'm sorry, and I'll fix it next time, but I think it's going to be fine. So I have to say, I was talking to Oliver in the Telegram group, and he had asked if I was going to do the Jason Evangelo Arch Challenge. And I was like, yeah, I've got plenty of time this week. I can totally do that. And then yesterday, which would have been the day that I had all day to play, electricity goes out for my entire block and down a main street near my house. So, like, the street lights weren't working. The entire house just had no electricity. I'm like, but my meat in my freezer, what's going to happen? And so anyway,
you cook it all and eat it.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I'm going to have to fire up the grill now because we're just going to have to cook it all and then hope the electricity comes back. But, yeah, so I bring everything back up. And it turns out I have everything individualized. So I have a router, I have a switch, I have an access point. They're all individual pieces instead of just one big box. And I bring everything back up, and my switch starts misbehaving, and I don't know what's going on with it. It's a Cisco SG300PP. It wasn't the cheapest thing in the world, so I'm not happy that it's not working right at the moment. But it's a small business switch, so you can do all kinds of fun stuff with it, like VLANs, and it just would not behave. So anyway, so I pull it out and then bring out one of my like old 24 port switches. And if you're familiar with equipment that big, you know that it's not silent. So yeah, if I don't close the doors to bedrooms, you can hear it all around the house. It's not good. So anyway, there goes my entire day that I had to play with Arch and anything else. So I'm running around like a chicken with his head cut off, trying to figure out how to get my network back up. So anyway, I finally get it all back up, and later that night I have to buy a replacement because I am not gonna sit there and listen to that switch for more than just a couple days. So I went and got a Cisco SG350P, which is just the newer version of the older switch. I really liked the switch, and hopefully this 350 will do me well. But it looks like, after some digging, that SG300 might be revivable. I think what had happened is during the power outage, it had forgotten something, like its MAC address. So I'd seen a couple of people revive these things by applying the MAC address and serial number back to them in the command line. So I don't know. I'm hoping. But the catch to this is I have to wait till I go to work because I don't have any computers with a serial port, like the old 9-pin serial port, to actually get into the switch. So I'm stuck for a bit. So long story short, maybe I'll have some good news to report next show. And then the last thing I bought was an ERPOE5. This is an Ubiquiti Edge Router 5, and it's got 5 networking ports. It's not a switch. It is a router with 5 ports. So this is going to allow me to, instead of using VLANs, I can actually physically segregate stuff out on my network. So anyway, like put people on their own guest LAN and all kinds of stuff for Wi-Fi. So anyway, this is not a networking podcast, so I won't get too far into that. But yeah, so I've had, I don't know, I've had a interesting past couple of weeks. Well, really interesting Saturday. So anyway, Moss, you've got a new job.
Yeah, I've started working as a auto parts driver for O'Reilly. The new job has kept me completely occupied, but I get to listen to more podcasts during drive time. No new money, no new hardware. I did sell the Canon printer at last and ordered the HDMI cable so I could test those other computers I have. I found that I didn't have Mumble or multiple workspaces set up for Ubuntu Budgie 1904, and AR&R in Bodhi is not that easy compared to displays, so I'll likely just continue to use Linux Mint for podcasts for the present. Once again, when you need something to work the first time and every time, Linux Mint for the win. I've been polishing my script for the next episode of Distro Hoppers Digest this Wednesday. The last episode could have stood a bit more work on my end, and I will take the learning experience and grow from it. We're getting some good downloads on that. We're over 100 on episode 2 and close to 200 on episode 1. I was hoping to install OpenMandriva LX4 on the announced date of June 6th, but it is not out yet and the announcement seems to have been pulled. Large parts of the openmandriva.org website were giving 404 or 505 errors, but have been revived just this week. Softpedia states that the final version will be out, quote, in summer or early autumn, end quote, with no source quoted. The donation to Linux Mint has been made in the name of mintCast, the mintCast team, as promised, June 1st, so it'll be in the June numbers. I spent a lot of time being sad as the Destination Linux Telegram group is exploding with all the wonderfulness of self, and I have to sit here and mope. But instead of getting down in the dumps about that, why don't we hear from Josh? What's going on with you?
So, this week I have been picked as a finalist in 2 awards. One of them is the Tech for Good Awards in the BT Young Pioneer section. So BT is like one of the big telecom companies here in the UK. And I actually was a finalist in this in 2017, and I entered it again just to see where I'd get, and I ended up in the final again. So fingers crossed for that. The awards ceremony is on the 18th of July, I think. So about a month from now. So hopefully I'll be able to update you on that. But I also got chosen as a finalist in the final suite of the ARM Young Coder of the Year. So ARM, the chip company, made me a finalist in one of their competitions, which was great. So yeah, that's been a good week. Unfortunately, I have mock exams for the next 2 weeks, so my ability to do stuff has been quite limited. Revision is not the best thing in the world. It's very boring. You sit there wanting to do something else, but I have to do it anyway because school is apparently important. I also installed Deepin on my Dell XPS 13, which I bought off Tony Hughes over I think it's over 9 months ago now or something like that. And it's a really great laptop. So I dual boot it with Windows because I need Windows for certain stuff. And I thought, let's give Deepin a try. On my main PC at home, I run Linux Mint. So I sort of use my dual boot on my laptop as kind of like a testing thing. It's a really great distro. The installation process is really good. It's a very graphical installer, and it's probably the best installer I've ever seen on a distro. I'd highly recommend it if you're starting out with Linux and you're not so sure about different drives and all that. One example was, because I dual boot, sometimes drive selection can be quite hard, but there was big graphical buttons with a Windows logo showing which partition was Windows, and then a Linux Mint logo showing which one was Linux Mint. So it gave me a good guide as to what I was doing, and I didn't really feel scared when doing it, like I normally do, because I don't like messing things up.
That sounds like the way that Mac does their things.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Just like,
It's very much
cool.
like that. It's very graphical, with the buttons and all of that showing you where to go. One of the weird things that I actually did it when I was with Tony at our lug the other week, and the interesting thing is the grub menu. It didn't detect Windows 10 at first, so you actually had to run a command in the terminal to kind of like get grub to detect other things on different partitions. So that was quite a weird thing, but I'm not sure if that happens for everyone. I don't know if anyone else has tried to do it and had a similar thing, but it was just a one-line thing, first result on Google. It wasn't really anything to be worried about. The only weird thing is about Deepin is the screen setup for external displays is absolutely terrible. You have to drag it, and then it kind of like overlaps each other, all the displays, and it's not like Linux Mint where you just drag it and it works. It really is the worst thing I've ever seen. It took me about an hour just to sort screens out, which is really not the experience you want. But it worked anyway. The good thing is I have a DisplayPort MST hub, which stands for Multiple Transport Hub or something like that. Multi-Stream Transport Hub, something like that, which basically has one DisplayPort going to 3, and then you split the displays. Ubuntu, this is a nightmare to get working, but Deepin just works straight away. So yeah, it's been a good experience with that.
We need to get you on Distro Hopper's Digest.
Yeah, I should probably do a full review at some point. I'd be happy to do that. But unless anyone has something to say about what I've said, it's on to Tony Hughes.
Well,
I was just gonna.
before you. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say before you go on, that was actually gonna be the desktop environment that I was gonna install in Arch, just to make myself feel worse. And now that I said it on air, I have to do it.
Yeah, I'm actually.
I was just gonna... Go on, Josh.
I'm actually thinking of wiping Linux Mint on my desktop and maybe installing Deepin, but I did not say that.
No!
I was just going to say as well, Josh is being a bit disingenuous because he actually bought the Dell XPS from the auction. I just did the bidding on his behalf, and luckily enough, his top end of his financial range was good enough to win the bid. So, he got a good deal at the auction. Our sadly lamented, now deceased auction.
Yeah, it was just within the
prices.
Yeah, it was just within the price range as well, like by $2 or something like that. So
yeah,
lucky to get it.
Anyway, I'll move on to what I've been doing this week. I've bought a new second-hand Dell E7440. I picked up another cheap one off eBay this time. obviously because I can't go to the auction anymore. Managed to get it on a good deal. It was even better when I got it home because it turned out it was an i7 as opposed to the advertised i5, which made it an even better buy. And I stuck Windows 10 on it, and I've been playing with that and getting that dual booted. I've now got Linux on it as well. Also, unfortunately, this is a rather sad confession, but I finally got scammed online this week. I couldn't find my European health insurance card. I'm going on vacation next Sunday, and I went online to order a new one and got caught out by one of these dodgy processing websites that charges you to do what you can do for free. It was totally my fault. I wasn't feeling very well because I've got an ear problem at the moment, and I didn't. I rushed it a bit and didn't read all the small print, and ended up getting copped for 33 quid. But it's a painful lesson, and it'll make me more careful next time. But I do understand how that more vulnerable people than myself can get scammed with these things, and things that take a damn sight more money off them than that as well. On a better note, after a conversation with Ken Fallon of HPR, they're going to air the first episode of Distro Hoppers Digest next Thursday, the 20th of June. It'll be going out to a podcatcher near you, just to give us a little bit of publicity. So that's great. And that's about it from me for this last fortnight. So, Joe, what have you been up to?
Well, we had family in town for a while, so I didn't get to do too many projects until about yesterday, where I had some fun. But between preparing for family and then having family here and then cleaning up after the family left, not a whole lot of time. But I did get a chance to, last week work on a Bluetooth speaker that I had ordered. It was slightly messed up when I received it, but somebody had already worked on it. The power port had broken, so they pulled that out, and then they pulled out the battery and wired directly to the board on the battery power connections. And it worked, plugged in, but I took it apart further, and I also saw that the speakers were just hooked up by the wires sitting on the connections. No solder, no anything. So what I did was I decided to make it better. I took apart an old USB power bank and set it inside. Got a glue gun, got it situated the way I wanted, glued it down, and drilled a hole so that I could get to the button for the battery. And then I took a USB cable and split it in half. Well, two USB cables, and split the one in half, and ran the power for the battery out through the holes that they had used for the power that they had on it. And then I took another USB cable and cut that short and hooked that to the power points on the Bluetooth board, and got it all stitched back together, and it works great like it's supposed to. Again, the only difference from stock is that it has a wire sticking out for charging. It was fun. And then, when my dad showed up, he brought me the old Atari 1010 that he had. And that is specifically an Atari 1010 program recorder for cassettes. So if, my Atari 400 weren't currently dead, I could hook that up to it and run a whole bunch of the cassettes that he brought along with it, or program my own. And so I'll be looking in the future to getting another Atari 400 and setting that up and seeing how well it works still. Also, I received yesterday a box of broken speakers and headphones to work on. And I was planning on working on it on my vacation, but I got started yesterday, and, well, I just kept going. And a lot of it is unfixable. in various ways, and then some of it I didn't have any luck with gluing some of the headbands back together. That they'd snap again almost right away, even with 12 to 15 hours of curing on the what is it, the binary compound I was using. So, but I did get a few of them working, and a couple of them working really well. And I ended up with a Sony SRS XB30 and a Sony XRS XB40, which it looks like if I want to, I can turn around and sell, and it more than make my money back, which always makes me happy. Got to pay for those projects somehow. Uh, oh, been trying to get Borderlands 2 Commander Lilith and the Fight for Sanctuary, which was a free DLC that recently came out, I think a week ago, working, but there is no Linux version of that currently. There's only Apple and Mac, or Mac and Windows, excuse me. And well, so it's not working on my Linux install, so I tried to switch that over to Proton, but then I couldn't get the game to launch. And I see that other people were able to get it working, but I haven't dug into it too much. After the show today, I'm going to try the Lutris version and see how well that works, because evidently this expansion, this DLC, is supposed to add more levels and more game content and almost, just a whole nother storyline to play. So I am interested in playing it. Yeah, and that's all I have. I think we're ready for the news.
Well, hang on one sec. I've got a quick suggestion. Well, this was something that was posed by the community, by a couple of people. So we had gotten the feedback that our shows get a little long, and I agree with that. I mean, they're about an hour and a half on the short side. So we were kicking around this idea that what if we chop the show into two? It's really the same show, but we'll chop it into maybe like a news section and the bi-weekly wanderings, and then on 1 week, so on our normal Tuesday that we release, and then the following Tuesday will be the other half of the show. So the show itself is really the same, but we'll give it to you all in two pieces so that it's a much shorter listen instead of one long show. So I guess you would end up with something like the mintCast news, and then what we've been up to, and then the mintCast innards, and check this out, and some of the feedback and all the other stuff. So it really kind of, what we really wanted to do was pose this to the community. And most of everybody that listens to the show gets about this far. So that's kind of why I wanted to put it here. It doesn't belong here. It's really more of a check this out kind of thing. But I wanted to put it here because most people continually listen to about the 30-minute to the 1 hour mark. And that's about where we're at. So if you're listening and if you have an opinion, please let us know in the Telegram group. Hit us up on Discord, all that stuff up at the top of the show. Get in contact with us, because this is something that I don't think mintCast has ever done. And if we get a lot of feedback that is, yeah, do it, then, absolutely, we'll forge ahead and we'll make two shows and do it. If we get a lot of negative response out of this and we hear, no, keep it, just shorten the show, or just keep it the way that it is, or make no changes whatsoever, we'll do that. And yeah, so we wanted to lay it at the feet of you all, the listeners, and we wanted to hear what you said about this particular topic. So anyway, with that being said, now we can head on to the news. That sounded great. So this fortnight's news has us a few different topics, and the first thing that we've got up is my favorite thing all year. So this is Firefox has tracking protection baked in now. So I love this story because I've been with Firefox for years, And one of the things, I mean, this is before Quantum, right? This is before Firefox got fast, and it was before Firefox added in all of the new privacy features that they had, and now Firefox is adding more privacy features to their browser. So I am so happy about where Firefox is going. They're shaping up to be anti-Chrome, and I mean that's right where I'm at. So do y'all use Chrome or do y'all use Firefox?
I use Chrome.
I'm going
mainly-
anti-Google.
Ah.
I'm mainly Firefox, although I have got a Chrome browser opened with the chat room in it at the moment.
I mostly use Firefox, but I also have Midori and Web set up on most of my distros.
Nice. So one of the best things about what was it, Firefox 67, with the newest major revision of Firefox, when that installed, I was beaming about battery life the other show, the last show, and it turns out it wasn't just the kernel update that gave me better battery life. It was Firefox. So at work, I'll take my laptop and I'll mess around and do some things, but it turns out that when I use Chrome, my battery life is abysmal. I can barely squeak out 4 hours of battery life using Chrome on my laptop. So if it's open, 4 hours is pretty much what I get. When I swap over to Firefox and use it exclusively, we're talking 6 hours. So I know the kernel has something to do with that, but I think I need you guys to try this as well. Try Firefox for a day and let me know what your battery life is like if you use a laptop.
I keep mine plugged in, so...
Yeah,
okay,
I'm usually almost always plugged in.
Okay, so I guess you don't have much of a baseline to work off of.
Right.
Well,
I usually use my laptops unplugged, so I could. But there again, I use Firefox most of the time, so it's difficult to say whether any extended battery life is to do with Firefox or other things.
So switch to Chrome and...
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
Do it the other way around, yeah.
Yeah. You've got your baseline already. Install Chromium or Chrome and see what the battery life does. If it's worse, better, same, whatever. Because maybe I'm something up with my laptop. Maybe it was all kernel. But it just seems to me that Firefox is just killing it. It's faster. It's better battery life. They're adding all this privacy stuff in there for you to make sure that you're not tracked on the web. I mean, there's no way to get rid of all of it, but we've got someone on the inside that is our advocate. That is a privacy-focused user advocate that's standing up to all of this data harvesting that's going on the web right now. So, if for nothing else, Firefox is amazing just for that. Even if the battery life thing wasn't the way that it is, Firefox is still already better. So
I'll try and give it a go over the next couple of weeks using Chrome.
Yeah, please do.
What happens. I won't be able to report it next time because I won't be here, but I'll do it the time after that.
Okay. So to turn this on, just in case it's not on for you, you can go and check. If you open up Firefox, go to your, what is that, the Preferences button? Oh yeah, Preferences, and go to Privacy and Security. Under the Content Blocking heading, you get Custom, and then just check the little trackers box if it's not already checked. So I think Mozilla is pushing this out in an update, so it will be automatically turned on for you. But if you want it and you haven't gotten that update just yet, go through that process and you can turn it on for yourself. And that's as soon as they announced it, yep, I went right in, turned that on, and I feel a little bit better. Might be placebo, but I feel nice about
Mine's
this.
there already. Also, the cookies from websites that I'm not currently on.
Good.
So, like, if a third-party cookie comes through, I go, nope, sorry.
Yes, that's great, and that's one of the biggest ways that that companies will track you from site to site. So, Facebook has their little tendrils all over you, whether you like it or not, whether you're a user or not. They know. And next up on the list, we have E3. So I need to know, how many of these games are Linux, not exclusive, but available on Linux at launch? Anybody have any idea?
No, I haven't checked it.
0 for me because I don't play games.
Yeah, there you go. So I'm really curious about how this is all going to work out. So I don't know. I have my games that I normally play, and none of them are on this list. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see which ones of these are Linux supported or not.
I'm excited about Cyberpunk 2077 and Doom Eternal and the new Watch Dogs.
Ooh, yeah, the Cyberpunk one is pretty much like candy for the internet. Everybody went crazy when Keanu Reeves said he was going to be part of that game. I don't know how close you guys keep your ear to the ground on like memes and the internet stuff, but oh my god, you would think that that it was the second coming at that point. It was crazy. Everybody loves Keanu Reeves.
And there's
Seems
also
like
Baldur's Gate 3.
Ooh, now that one's one I didn't know about. I played Baldur's Gate. Oh
Back
man,
in the day.
like yeah, years ago. Wow, that is cool.
I'm really excited for the Microsoft Flight Simulator because this is something I've been waiting for like ages. As soon as they played that trailer, I was like, oh. But I'm wondering what the price is going to be. It's probably going to be high because
Josh, your mic sounds like you've got a fan in front of it.
does it? Oh.
Yeah, it's a little choppy. But I got the gist of what you were saying about the Microsoft Flight Sim, and you just been waiting on it for a while.
Yeah.
The last time I played the Flight Sim was when I worked at Circuit City, and we had it on display because we were trying to sell joysticks. It was fun though. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think it'll be like 60 quid though. Or $60 will be the equivalent. It'll be high.
Interesting. So next up on the list, we have Zorin OS 15.
You bet.
Yeah, Moss, are you excited about this one?
Well, Zorin has always been a beginner's OS, and they're very excited about it. Their main highlight is Zorin Connect, which is sort of like K-Connect, KDE Connect. If you've got an Android device, similar to Pushbullet, Zorin Connect integrates your phone with the desktop experience. In addition, you get share files and web links between devices. You can use your phone as a remote control for your computer, control media playback on your computer from your phone, and pause playback automatically when a phone call arrives. We've got a link to the It's Foss review, which is always informative, and there's some good screenshots and whatnot. So enjoy.
So are you going to install this?
I haven't thought about it yet. We just got excited about Enso OS, and Tony saw it first, so he's probably going to review it soon. But I was thinking I might do it, and we could actually do a distro hoppers the way we'd originally planned, where we both use the same distro and report on it.
Ooh, that's right. Because you two have slightly different use cases.
It's true, but we get around, and Enso is another Xubuntu clone, so I don't want to do too much Ubuntu because everything I do is Debian-based, it seems. I may have to get around to Arch or something really silly soon.
Right, yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, so I got kind of far in the Arch install. I mean, I got everything but the desktop environment up and running. And yeah, I just didn't really have enough time to make sure everything was working right. But Arch is super easy. Like, if you can read instructions and you have a little bit of Linux background, like you know how to move around directories, you know how to copy files from here to there and edit files, I mean, you can do Arch. It doesn't. Okay, so yeah, this is coming from someone that didn't get the desktop environment done in time. So, speaking from a, I guess, server side, because you'd be able to do all the server stuff from at that point, but it just did not seem like that was a whole heck of a lot of stuff to it. And it just reminded me of installing Slackware way back in the day. I think even you and I talked about it in Discord, Moss, about just kind of some of the older distros. And I don't know. I mean, you just plug the things in. And I had even on Twitter to Jason Evangelo. He was when he was trumpeting out Arch and doing the Arch challenge and all that. I had mentioned to him that Arch is just like Lego Linux. It's just you plug the things in the right spot. You choose the things that you want, because most of the low level stuff is done for you. Like, you don't have to configure systemd. It's already there. It's already ready. The hard stuff is done for you with Packstrap. So yeah, it's really just picking and choosing what you want and plugging it in and making sure that you don't install two things that disagree with each other.
Right. LFS is easy if you know what you're doing.
Nah, I didn't say that about LFS. Oh man, I think you have to have some real Linux muscle for LFS. Now that one might be one of the year-long challenges that you take on Distro Hoppers Digest.
Take the Gentoo challenge.
Oof! I had students that have done that, and let me tell you why I will never do Gentoo. This guy had purchased a laptop, and it had like one of the top end i7s on it, 4 cores, hyper-threading. It was like clocked at 2.6 with turbo of 3 point something or other. And this guy sat there for like 45 minutes compiling Chromium. Yeah, I get it. Like, compiling stuff will make things a 0.005% faster. But oh my gosh, man. Like, I cannot imagine having to do that every time I need to update. And Gentoo is rolling, so every little incremental update comes down, so you have to compile it. No, thank you.
Folks, we have to forgive Leo. He's been straitjacketed by the Full Circle newscast for so long that he has to keep talking when he gets news to really report.
I know. Yeah, I can't. Yeah, when I'm on Full Circle, I have to just the facts. And then when I get the chance to tangent off, I definitely will. So, speaking of that tangent, we can lasso it back and talk about Deluge 2.0. Now, what torrent client do you guys use? Because obviously we only download Linux ISOs.
I use Transmission.
Transmission? Oh, so you're a stock guy.
Well, I like that I can do it all from command line, so I can script everything I do. So all my downloads happen on my server, but I can get the .torrent files on any of my other machines, put it in a specific location, and it all gets done automatically.
Interesting. Okay, I didn't even think about using a transmission or using any BitTorrent client from the command line. Huh. Interesting. So does anybody else use BitTorrent clients of any kind?
Not if I can help it.
Yeah. I use QBitTorrent myself. So this is just something that I don't know, this is a long time ago that I made that decision. So this doesn't affect me too terribly much, but for those of you that are using BitTorrent clients, Deluge 2.0 is out. So go check it out. Some nice bug fixes and a couple new features. Check that out. Then we have Open Project 9, a free open source software alternative to Trello or Jira. So what is Open Project, Moss?
It's a collaborative open source project management software. You can use it for free for personal use and set it up and host it on your own server. This way you control your data. Of course, you get access to premium features and priority help if you are a Cloud or Enterprise Edition user. We have a link to the It's FOSS article on it in the show notes. I don't see a reason to go on about the whole thing, but if you're into project management, you'll probably want to look at this.
Nifty. I think this is something that I might try to look into for some of my classes. I have students when they build things. We need to keep track of what's going on. And if this is project management, I think this may have fixed me a little bit. This might solve a lot of problems for me. Awesome. I'll take a look. I might report back on this here maybe in a month or so. Next up, we have Unity Editor for games officially available for Linux. And this is something that just changed not too long ago. And we didn't have a client for the longest time. There was a beta client that you could use, but it wasn't the most stable thing in the world. And I even remember there was a listener to the show that emailed into us, and I want to say I emailed back saying, yeah, there's a beta, but and it was one of those things that, like, this is the last thing I need to move from Windows to Linux. And Yeah, so there was a solution, but it wasn't official. It wasn't something that that I could recommend with a smile on my face and it'll work. It's great. But now I can recommend it. It is fully supported on CentOS and Ubuntu 18.04. I think it's CentOS 7, Ubuntu 16.04, and 18.04, which means that Linux Mint is supported as well. So does anybody have any experience with Unity Editor?
I don't like it.
Ooh, yeah, actually, you might be the best person to ask about this. So what don't you like about it?
Most things. Mostly the tutorials are very out of date on the website. Or were when I last looked. It. I think you have to be really into it, to be able to have the determination to make sure things work, and I obviously just wasn't. But it don't get me wrong, it is good once you get it working, but it is a steep learning curve.
Yeah, absolutely. When I don't know, I always have these dreams of doing something with this, but every time I get into it, it just reminds me why I'm not a programmer.
Yeah, I don't know
yeah.
what language it uses. I can't quite remember.
It's its own, and I'm wrong, but it reminds me of JavaScript. But then again, it's been years since I've looked at it, so I could be thinking about something totally different. But anyway, the last big point that Moss wants us to cover is that it is not open source. You can run it on open source OSs, but it is not open source. So be aware that if you are installing this, it is proprietary.
Doesn't make much of a difference to me.
Yeah, I'm pretty pragmatic, and this is something that we brought up in the chat the other day as well. And certainly there are a couple of people in that chat that are staunchly open source, but I think the majority of us in there seem to be pretty pragmatic about this stuff. That if there was a Unity editor that was open source, that would be what the majority of everybody would use. But because it's not, and if Unity Editor is something that you want to use, it's not going to stop people from using it. And yeah, so I don't know.
Well, I'm a little sensitive on the subject, as you know, because I got kicked out of one group for talking about anything that wasn't open source, and then really jumped on pretty hard in another group and eventually left them, because there's good vendors out there that are not developing for Linux, and why they're not developing for Linux is that people are saying, oh, that's not open source, and they won't buy it. And that's not the way to be treating people, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm of the same opinion. I mean, if you're gonna bring it to Linux, bring it to Linux, and just if you want a proprietary license on it, then okay. But
well, it's not only not the way to be treating vendors; it's not the way to be treating people that buy the software.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well. But that's also one reason a lot of companies won't port things over to Linux, because you look at something like Photoshop. There's lots of people say one of the only reasons they don't come over to Linux is because Photoshop isn't available. But Photoshop have never, Adobe have never even thought about transporting it to Linux, because they know a lot of people won't buy it. It would be a very small market, because so many people are so zealot about open source software.
Yeah,
we shoot ourselves in the foot because of it.
Yeah, I co-run a magazine, and the other months we were looking at switching software, and because the whole team are remote on all sorts of different sides of the country around the world, we kind of needed something that works on Windows, Mac, and Linux, and quite a few of the team members are Linux only, and that really cut down what we could choose. We went for Adobe InDesign in the end, because I think it actually does work on Linux. I think it's one of the only ones that does work. But choosing something like that for a remote team that you don't know what operating system everyone's going to run now and in the future is quite something to consider. because not everything runs on Linux. And if you use something like Wine, it might not always work. So that was something that I've had to consider in the past.
Hey, Josh, I have a question.
Yeah,
Do you ever sleep?
I think so.
2 hours
What-
as needed.
1
Just
hour at a
checking.
time.
I probably do too much, maybe. But
Well,
I
you
We
do a
shouldn't
lot,
pull
but you can't
Josh's
say
leg
too
too much
much.
here. Yeah, we can't pull his leg too much here. We might chase him away.
Well,
Then
no.
what would we do for a live stream?
If I didn't give him a hard time, you'd think I was singling him out or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, I don't know. The proprietary argument is really hard to make if you're a gamer, and I think a lot of the people that have an opinion on the open source side may not be gamers, because I mean the games aren't open source. But I don't know. I will happily install Steam, which is not open source, and install a game which is not open source, and play on open source translation things like DXVK. So I don't know. It just does not bother me that much.
And we just had all of our open source purists delete our subscription.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for those of you that are just open source is the only way. That is not my opinion. It may be else. It may be someone else's, but it's not mine. All right. Well, that's it for our news and pile o opinions. So now we can head on into the innards. So in this show, we planned on talking about Secure Shell and all of the crazy coolness that comes along with it. So Secure Shell, I imagine this has come up in a conversation, whether you knew what it was or you didn't know what it was. You've probably heard the acronym SSH. It stands for Secure Shell. So S for secure, SH for shell, and it's a remote control protocol. But naming it that doesn't do it justice, because it's so much more. But down at the very bottom of this, when you dig all the way down, all it's doing is running commands on a computer that you are not physically sitting at. Typically, that means that you're connected to that computer over a local area network. That might mean that you're connecting up to your friend's computer that lives 5 miles away from you. That could also mean that you took a flight to China and need to remote into a computer that you have at your house. So it doesn't matter physically where you are, SSH will work. Now, we're going to focus on just the local network today. And what I mean by that is, if you want to do that thing I said about with China, if you want to go to a different country, hundreds and hundreds or thousands and thousands of miles away from where you are, then you're going to have to know a little bit about networking to get that done. You need to know how to do some port forwarding. You need to know some basics about IP addressing. And if you don't, it's going to make things really, really difficult. But if you have an admin in your pocket that you can ask, I don't know, leo@mintcast.org, we can make it work. So here's the thing. Like I said, we're going to focus on the local network today, and let's just see what this thing can do. So step one, you need to have a user account on the remote computer, the computer that you want to connect to. So for me, I need a username Leo on my friend's computer. Or, and this is not really the way to do it, you can use your friend's login credentials to log in. So I would really recommend creating a new user account on the Farside computer. So in Linux Mint, pop open users and just create a new one. Give it admin privileges if you plan on doing things like updates or whatever, but just create a new user. This is going to make things so much simpler for you in the long run. So create your user account, step one. Step two, while you're on that computer creating your user account, pop open the terminal and run sudo apt install OpenSSH-server. This is going to do all of the magic. Everything that we're going to talk about today totally depends on whether or not you have this package installed. So make sure, it is super important that you have this installed. Then, there are a couple of things that you got to consider at this point. OpenSSH server will run all the time. When your computer's on, it'll run. When you reboot it, it'll come back up right after you restart. When you log in, it's already running. So this is the default behavior, and it's because most people prefer it this way. If I'm installing OpenSSH server, I want it to be running all the time, just in case, What if the power goes out and the power comes back and my computer boots back up? SSH is running. But if you don't want SSH to run all the time, maybe you're going to be gone for a week, so you turn on SSH server, and then when your vacation or your work thing is over, you come back home, and then you turn SSH off, and you want it to reboot and not come back up. You can run a command systemctl disable SSH, and that won't turn SSH off totally, but it'll prevent it from turning on after you reboot. So that reminds me, though, that you'll have to run systemctl start SSH before you ever want to actually use set up and configured the way that you want. We need to go back to our machine that we're going to be connecting to our server with, our remote computer, and we want to run SSH, your user. So if you don't know what that is, on the remote computer, run ifconfig or IPA, IP space A, and that will show you the IP address of your machine. And you'll see something like ENP will be the name of your adapter. But most likely, if you don't have a lot of networking knowledge, there's a good chance that the IP address is going to look like 192.168.something something. So that's probably what's going to go in that IP address section. So, if you are successful and there's no firewall blocking you, it will get to the point where it asks you, do you want to remember this machine? So this cool little key that it is generating basically will be the same every time you connect. And if for some reason that key ever changes, the terminal will scream at you and say, hey, whoa, this is not the same computer you were connecting to yesterday. Maybe check the authenticity of your machine. So this is to prevent you from, if, let's say, some guy in a hoodie decides he wants to compromise your remote machine, if he changes anything, that key will change. And if that key changes, this is just really to protect you. SSH will scream at you and tell you not to do it. But it will also tell you how to override that if it is an issue. So once you get to that point, once you hit yes on yes, save that key, you just provide your username and your password and everything starts to work. You now have a prompt open up on the remote machine. And you can shuffle files around, you can create new users, you can update your machine. Anything that you can do in the terminal is doable over SSH. The cool thing about this is that it pretty much sits you digitally in front of the remote computer, allowing you to do anything that you want to do from the terminal. If you can do it in the terminal, you can do it on a computer a million miles away from yourself, as long as SSH is installed. So anyway, the real benefit here is that there are some additional protocols that come in with SSH. And one of those protocols I had to cry about what was it, like 2 months ago when SSH 8.0 came out. They said, hey, stop using SCP. It's not secure because we're not patching it, and there are a couple of bugs out there for it. So I cried about that, and then I realized that SFTP not only is the same exact thing, but it's more secure and continues to get bug fixes. So the real benefit here is that you get to use SFTP. Now, what that means to you is that the stuff that we just talked about allows you to push and pull any file that you want. You have a file on your local computer that you want to sit on your remote computer, or you have a file that you wrote on your remote computer and you need to just get access to it and see it. SFTP. It's so awesome. So how to get connected up to this. You've already done the heavy lifting. What you need to do now is open up files. Now, what that means in Cinnamon, if you're running Linux Mint Cinnamon, means that you're opening up Nemo. If you're in Mate, that means you're opening up Kaja. If you're in XFCE, that means you're opening up Thunar. I don't know, that one. And all of these have the ability to connect up to an SFTP connection. So in Nemo and Kaja, I did not try it in Thunar, so I don't know if it's going to exactly say the same thing. But in Nemo and Kaja, you just open up files, click on the file option up at the top, and hit connect to server.
Apologies to our Spanish listeners who know that it's really pronounced caja.
Well, yeah, so I've actually had this idea that that's what it's called, but I don't know. I don't know.
The word means box.
Well, right. But I don't know. Isn't Mate a South African tea or something like that?
It is not really a tea, but I guess you could call it a tea. It's brewed up from a root.
Okay. So I'm getting off on a tangent, but yeah. So Kaja, Kaha, whichever your file manager is in Mate, that's what you're going to use. Then hit File, Connect to Server, and all you got to do is fill out the IP address where it says server, fill out the username, and fill out the password. Make sure that it says SSH in the little type section. Then hit connect. Boom. All of your files are right in front of your face on the remote computer.
And you do have to make that change because SSH is not the default.
Yeah, it seemed like in Kaja, it was public FTP or something like that. But in Nemo, it is SSH by default. Or, well, maybe it's not. Okay, either way, double check that it says SSH before you click connect, otherwise it won't work. I think maybe it was set that way because I use it that way. Maybe it just remembers. I don't know. But either way, you have now in front of your face all of the files that are on the remote computer, which means that you can drag and drop any file that you want to into your home folder. You can pull any file back from that remote machine, just back and forth. And this allows you to not have to use Windows Samba shares. Has anybody ever actually physically, manually set one of those up?
Yes.
And can you please tell me how not cool setting that up is?
It is extremely not cool. I don't know how else to explain it. It sucks.
It is a pain.
And there are reasons that I found alternatives.
Yeah, exactly. I use SFTP because every time I try to set up a Samba share, I have to scratch my head and remember 6 months ago when I did it the last time, and then I have to remember that, oh yeah, you got to change this thing, and then you got to restart Samba, and then you got to do this, and then you got to hook it up to PAM, and then you got to make sure that there's a user locally that you can use to log into everything. And then because Windows is Windows, everything has the execute bit added to it. No. So anyway, long story short, SFTP is amazing, and it will just this is all stuff that is native to Linux.
I thought I had you converted a while ago.
Now Samba's great. Samba's good.
I thought I had you converted to SSHFS.
Oh, you do. You absolutely do. So SFTP is great for those one-off connections, and since you're going to talk about SSHFS, that's going to get into how to keep it there for all of eternity, and it fixes a lot of permissions issues that you would run into with SFTP. So that's how you do it. That's SSH. The other thing that I wanted to cover today was every time SSH comes up in a conversation, there's always that one guy in the back that is like, you should use public key authentication. All right, let's do it. It is literally 2 commands. It is SSH-keygen. Here's what you're doing. You're creating a padlock. You know those big locks that you slap on those doors in the back where you've got like a shed or something like that, and you just get a big master lock. I don't know if everybody has access to a master lock, but you get one of those big things, right? When you do SSH-keygen, SSH-keygen, you create the padlock. That is your public key. Show it to everybody. Give it to everybody. Think about it. When you put that lock on that shed, anybody that has the guts to walk up to that door can see that padlock, right? It means nothing if you don't have the key. So SSH-keygen creates the padlock, and it creates the key. So you'll need to get familiar with the file names on these. But the padlock is ID underscore RSA dot pub. Pub stands for public. It's the key that you show to the public. Then it creates another file named ID underscore RSA. There's no .pub at the end of that one. That one is special. That's the key that you're going to show to the public key. They mathematically match. I won't go into why they mathematically match, but big numbers. It always has to do with primes. But they match. And when they match, magic happens. You log in without a password. Well, you can. You can force SSH to ask you a password as well. So you have your private key and your password required. So like basically a two-factor authentication going on right here. And so SSH Keygen does all of that stuff for you. Then the other command that you need to run is ssh-copy-id. So what this does is it reaches into the directory where these two keys live on your local machine. And in that command, so ssh-copy-id, you do a -i to tell it that here comes the public key file I want you to copy. And then you put the file path to your IDRSA pub file. And in the show notes, I'm going to have the actual command that I used minus the IP address. You'll have to fill that out for yourself. And then at the end of that command, you type in username, whatever your username is on the remote computer, at the IP address of the remote computer. As long as you can provide the password to that username, it will copy the key over and apply the permissions. So if you go Google how to do this, you're going to find some how-tos telling you to use SSH copy ID and some how-tos telling you how to do it manually.
We were talking about this yesterday, and evidently I was using the older method, which causes problems.
Yeah, because what SSH copy ID does is it creates a file called authorized keys on the remote computer, and it's really just, it's a list of all the padlocks that you've created. And if you have the same username and you create new keys every time, that means that you're going to need multiple padlocks. And if that's the case, then the SSH copy ID command is really what you want to do. You don't have to worry about managing them. You don't have to worry about, oh my God, did I typo in the authorized keys file or whatever. SSH copy ID does all of that magic for you. Makes your life so much easier. So when that's in there, you're good. You can start using your key to log in. But wait, there's one last point that I want to make. In the SSHD config file, you want to turn off password authentication. Think about it in I've got a DigitalOcean droplet, or I've got an Amazon Web Services VM, or I've got something from Google Cloud or whatever. I've got a machine, Linux machine on the internet that I want to only allow keys for. What you want to do is edit the etc ssh sshd underscore config file. So use Nano or VI or Pico or whatever your text editor of choice is. Edit this file, and you want to find where in that file it says password authentication, and it should be set to no already. But there's a hash mark or a pound sign or an octothorpe or a whatever you want to call that 8-pointed little thing at the beginning of that line. Delete the little hash mark. Leave the password authentication no part alone. If it doesn't say no, make it say no. If it says yes, make sure it says no. Remove the hash mark and save the file. Restart SSH with systemctl, restart SSH. And now, if you do not present that server with a key, it will not allow you to log in. And let me tell you, these keys are a million times better than any password you could ever come up with and remember. There's just no comparison in the length of what you're getting with this stuff. So, that's my bit. Install SSH. Copy your keys over. Make this super duper easy. And here's the beauty of all of this. When you open up that connect to server thing in Kaja or in Nemo or in Thunar, it automatically grabs your key. So all you have to do is present your username. You don't have to type the password in. It will work without it. Makes things so much easier. And because you created these keys, you're already in an amazing position to do what Joe is about to tell you.
Yep. Okay. Well, I wanted to go a bit further with automating SSH and show something useful that you can do on a daily basis with it. So I'm going to tell you how to set up SSHFS so that you can access all of your files as if they were mounted locally. Access times are pretty good. I mean, it works really well. Even from outside of my home network, I can watch movies that are on my server at home using VLC. The other media player that comes with Linux Mint doesn't work as well, but for some reason, VLC tends to do things over networks better. And so, even with a thin device, a tablet running Linux or an older laptop, you'll be able to have those files accessible as if it was local. And after your keys are set up, make sure SSHFS is installed. It's usually already installed when you install SSH, so you should be good. And then you need a local folder to mount to. So you're going to have to create a folder to use as a mount, and you're going to want to set the permissions as probably 755. And then you're going to want to test before you do any scripting to make it easier. And the command to do this is SSHFS and then your username at then the server and then, colon slash and then the path to what you're trying to mount. And then space and then your path to your local mount point. And then at the end, do a -C. And the -C is allows for compression, which will make things run much more smoothly. And now, what I do is I usually mount my entire /mount folder from my server to a folder within the /mount on whatever device I'm using. And okay, well, the next thing I do after that on a clean setup is I'll make aliases to the stuff that I use, but I'm not wanting to use every day. So all I have to do is go in terminal, type 3 letters, hit enter, and automatically connects to whichever devices I have set up. And then the next thing that you should try out is I found a way to automate connecting those drives whenever you connect or disconnect to a network. And I think it's cool. And I completely redid my setup to verify that all of this is working. And there's a couple of things that I think need some tweaking, but I'm going to work on that later. For now, there are 2 places where you're going to set up scripts, and that's /etc/network/if-up.d, and that's for when you initially connect to a network. And the other place is /etc/network/if-down.d, which is for when you disconnect from a network. And the files that you create there should be bash scripts, but without the .sh on the end, and they will be owned by root. So there's some further magic that we got to do there to make it work the way we want. Because if you fuse mount a remote folder to a local folder as root, then your user will not have access to it, no matter what permissions you gave it previously. Okay, and I did include a copy of the 2 scripts. They're extremely short in the show notes. And basically, all it does is, you got your, well, on the upside, I have it set to sleep for 5 seconds, and then I use su user, and then the SSH command that I gave, and a little bit more in between there. But the reason you're using su user in a root script is so that it switches to your user so that the ownership is proper. Okay. And the reason for the delay is because after the network turns on, I want to give it enough time to get an IP address and get everything set up. And I haven't had any problems with a 5-second delay so far. And now for the down script, it's just, once again, a couple of lines, but it's kill all space dash 9 space SSHFS, and then sudo umount, and then the local folder that you have there. Now you need to do this every time, because if you don't, then the system assumes that something is still mounted at that mount point, and you won't be able to reconnect anything. So, and it will lock up your file browser because it keeps looking for something that simply isn't there. And that handles most situations. Now, there are some times where it doesn't work, such as if you're on a really bad Wi-Fi connection and it's dropping, or a really slow connection and it can no longer maintain the SSH connection. But I'm going to have to write a much more all-encompassing polling script that does the same thing that these other two scripts do in order to maintain that, and that seems like a lot of work right now. And I don't know, my server is also overheating under load again, but usually that requires me to be doing an SSHFS mount while doing some type of YouTube DL, and so I don't know if I'm going to have to rebuild and reset everything up again. But I'm going to have to figure out what I want with that. So Moss, what have you been working on with SSH?
Well, most of you want to know how hard it is. You understand I'm the least technical member on the team. It works. I may not remember how we got there, but with a lot of help from Leo, I managed to SSH to my wife's computer. I checked the files internal. I ran Kaha. I opened her external drive. Whoopee.
I think that's good, though. I think that's a good kind of baseline for what we want with this show, right? I mean, these tools from the outside look like they're really hard, and I think with the open source community being what it is, there are people that are always willing to help out, even if you have questions that you think might not be appropriate or whatever you think are so low level that you would just get flamed for asking them. I mean, there are certainly places like that, but mintCast ain't that place. So if you wanted to try this SSH thing out, and even if you wanted to take it as far as SSHFS, we can help. So feel free, send us an email about all this, because this is some technology that has been around for a long time that I absolutely wish everybody had the ability to use. And does it require a bit of thought? Yes. Does it require a little planning? Absolutely. But if you've never done it before, that's what we're here for. So ask away. Feel free. Don't be scared to try it. Give it a go. And if you run into a brick wall, I will absolutely raise my hand and say, just join the Telegram group, join the Discord group, and let me help you figure this thing out. I bet you anything, just when Moss and I were working on this, we realized that he had turned the firewall on, and it was just a matter of poking at a few things, figuring out what was wrong, and then we got it. So it's good. Let us know. Let us know, actually. Give us some feedback on if you decided to try this out and how it went. And we might be able to get you all the way.
Can I ask a question?
Please do.
Well, for the average home PC user, what benefit is of being able to set up an SSH on their own network? What benefits would that give you?
The shared files thing. I think everybody could benefit from doing that, because what is the alternative, right? It's SneakerNet. It's pop a flash drive in. Is it even formatted right? Because I just brought it home from the store. Now it's in TFS or whatever. And you got to put the file on there, plug it in, make sure it mounts right. And if you forget to do the safely remove, your file might not be there already, or it might not have been written properly or whatnot. And then when you plug it in, it may or may not work. I mean, surely it will, but
it gives you a more networky network.
True.
Basically, if all your network was doing was letting all your computers log into the internet, well, now you've got something else you can do with the network.
But
Absolutely.
isn't that what you'd use a network attached storage for?
Right, but with a
But how
network
do you
attached
access
storage,
on the network attached storage? I mean,
right.
yes, it can set it up as a share, but you can also usually SSH into whatever file server that you have.
Right, so it's probably easier and more secure to SSH into a NAS than it is to set it up as a shared drive.
Right.
Right.
If all you're looking for is just sharing files, then a NAS is no different than setting up Linux Mint. It absolutely isn't. And then dropping that SSH server package on top of it, and then all of a sudden, boom, you have file storage. There's no Samba. There's no web interface you have to log into, remember a separate password for, and then configure it all that way. It just put your user over there, and you have access to absolutely everything straight through Nemo or Kaja or Thunar or any of the file.
Right.
I think they all kind of have that.
Okay, that makes sense then. So it is something that everyday users at home would find useful to learn
Right.
and get set up.
Sure.
And also, once you've learned the skill for using it on your home network, then if you start using something like cloud storage, you can SSH into that as well.
Absolutely. And then that private public key thing that I was talking about, you only need one pair. Put your pub key on all those machines, and that same private key will get you into every server that you have.
Brilliant.
It is quite nice. And this right here is a gateway drug. SSH is a gateway drug to like all the other things in Linux, because pretty much everything works that way. Commands aren't really, too different from each other. So yeah, if you learn SSH and can get good with it, there's a good chance you might accidentally fall down the rabbit hole of learning Linux from the ground up. All right, well, I think that's it for our innards. So again, go install SSH, make it work. If you can't, talk to us. We'll move on into our vibrations from the ether. So we have our first email from, and I hope I get this right, Posh Ka, and this is one to Tony.
Yeah, this is about something we were talking about on the last show. And Pash says, it's good that you mentioned time shift. It may come into use after you've deleted the /.mozilla and realize that you've lost all your personal browser data. Removing the directory may have fixed your problems, but suggesting it as a solution is dangerous when the unwary user may not have proper backups. And because that was me talking about a fix that I got off one of the community channels. So I replied back and said, thanks for your comment, Pash. Maybe I should have been a bit more clear that I'm experienced at copying and pasting my .mozilla folder into new installs of Linux, including Mint, so I was not fazed by the suggestion of just deleting the folder and reinstalling it. But even if I hadn't got a backup, which I save fairly regularly anyway, on this occasion it was the only way to get Firefox to start to work again. But you are correct. Deleting this wipes out any bookmarks you've saved, bookmarks and saved passwords you have in Firefox. And unless you use Firefox account or have a backup folder, as in my case, you will be starting from scratch. So it is good practice when altering any .config file or folder to make sure you have a backup so that you know, and that you know the dangers of the action you're taking.
I have one comment and one suggestion. So the first comment is that I think this gets at the fact that when you use Linux forever, you forget how hard it is. I mean, not everything, but just like you forget how much you know when you just work on things from day to day. And yeah, it puts us in kind of in a position to, when we make suggestions or whatever, forget where we came from. But yeah, I don't know. It's just something always to be mindful of. But the suggestion that I have for this is instead of deleting the Mozilla folder, the .mozilla folder, maybe just rename it .mozilla_backup. And Firefox still will recreate a new .mozilla folder and then put new stuff inside of it. And you have the added benefit of if it didn't work the way you wanted to and you just want to revert back, you delete the .mozilla folder that was newly created and then just rename the Mozilla backup back to .mozilla. All right, and the next email we have is from Bob, and this is kind of to everybody, so I want to hand this one off to Moss so he can get his part out of the way.
Oh, goodness. Thank you. Bob writes, "Hi, guys. Longtime mintCast listener and mint user. A couple of things. In episode 308, I think, someone mentioned that HP printers have the print heads in the cartridges. Is that really correct? I know in the past Canon had replaceable print heads. They were removable from the printer, but even then they were not in the cartridges. Other printers have print heads fixed in the printer. I set up an HP printer today for someone, and there were no print heads in the cartridge. There were contacts so the printer can talk to the cartridge somehow, but that's all as far as I could see." And I looked it up, and it's still true on a large number of HP printers. We have a link to a 2.5-year-old list that we couldn't find an update of that lists all the HP models that still have the printer head in the cartridge. And Bob goes on to write, "I agree that HP are a good match for Linux. HP LIP is included in Mint, and to get to the GUI interface, just install HP LIP-GUI. Unlike every other brand I've tried, HP is the only one where I've seen the ink status reported back to the computer. Other brands provide only bare-bones drivers, and the scanner models are recognized by the Simple Scan program too." In episode 310, halfway through, someone was talking about the advantages of timeshift. I agree timeshift is good, especially in conjunction with doing automatic updates. However, the speaker implied that timeshift would back up user documents. Quote, "I deleted my file," end quote, and you can fix that problem as well with timeshift. My understanding is that timeshift is only for system files and not user files. Leo?
Yeah. So we had kind of been emailing back and forth. I think Tony Watts and somebody else, maybe it was Joe, had emailed. Yeah. And so I said, to tack on a bit to all of those emails, timeshift can back up personal files, but it doesn't do so by default. When going through the wizard, you're presented with the attached picture, and I had sent him an actual picture of the wizard window where it allows you to specify whether or not. So by default, it says, do not back up these files, but there is an include .files and include all. And if you just choose the all radio button, your home folder files, everything included, will also be backed up so that you can go back and, oh my God, I deleted this file, let's revert it. So it is possible, but if you just nexted through the timeshift thing, you are right. It would not have done that by default. So yeah, check out that wizard. You can just turn it back on from that. You can edit and then add that back in. So it should be doable.
And Bob continues, another thing, the website has a link on the right-hand side for email, which links to mintcast.org/author/mintcast/mintcast@mintcast.org. I suspect it should be a mail to link instead. Anyway, keep the podcast coming. Bob, Australia. And Joe had a comment.
Yeah. I said that he was correct on all points, even though I was wrong, and
Well, by
that we
default,
would bring
you're
it up
right.
on the show. And the email link has been fixed.
All right. So, and by the way, Tony went back and fixed that mail to link.
Yeah, we did that last night during the pre-show chat, didn't we?
Yeah. It usually takes some goading from each other to get things fixed.
Okay, the next piece of feedback is from Jeff in Orlando, and he emailed to say, "Thanks so much for the awesome mintCast expanded group host format. big boost in diversity and interests. However, there is one area of Linux coverage that is typically and mistakenly, in capitals, assumed to be of no concern on Linux, and that is adding even better security and privacy. Any chance of adding a security section to mintCast to cover and encourage more community support on security issues like these? 1. Monitoring or auditing repo systems updates, an entry point for viruses getting in and out of our machines at any moment. Repo versioning, logging, or snapshots for back virus scanning. 2. News coverage regarding any efforts or tips for somebody enabling new users to use Linux, Mint without proprietary code via generic open codecs, etc. Is this a pipe dream? Linux founders would love to see this happen. And he says, thanks, Jeff. Then he emailed again a few days later. I've been using Mint for 9 years and donate regularly. Yes, the one glaring oversight that actually has me strongly considering a different distro or even OS is the absurd default behavior of not preserving file creation dates within all the Linux GUI file browsers when doing a simple file drag copy. This is basically file timestamp corruption, breaking many new users' workflows and project timeline tracking. How does Mint really expect to be the Windows alternative if new Linux users can't even click and drag a file without altering it? GRSync GUI can preserve the file creation dates. Why don't Linux GUI file browsers also preserve file creation dates when copying? Thanks for the awesome podcast.
So so on the points that he made, or the suggestions that he made for show content, that's some deep stuff. I kind of want to go into some of that, but the creation dates, yeah, and I think it's just when you copy a file, it really actually creates a whole new file for you. So the creation date is more current, and rsync, and by extension grsync, will preserve that because you can add flags to preserve that. I don't know the answer to that question though, but that makes me want to ask another one, which is, which file browsers don't do this? Because I would suspect that Nemo and Kaja both behave similarly. I don't know about Thunar because it's not a direct Mint project, but it does make me want to go around and figure this out. So this might be something that I look into in the next couple of weeks just to see. But to be honest, I guess like without having to go through all that work, I would just set grsync to copy files over like every 30 minutes.
Yes, he was very emphatic about all these points. There are capital letters all over this email.
Well, yeah. Well, when creation dates matter to you, then yeah, I'd be upset about it too. So yeah, I don't know. That would be my Band-Aid solution anyways. Just use grsync and then do a 30-minute every 30 minutes. Just make sure that all the files are moved over.
It does depend what kind of files they are, because if you're talking about Word documents and things like that, you can track changes in LibreOffice. So there is a way of saving and date stamping changes in that. But if you're talking about other files like video files and things, I don't know how that would do.
Yeah, I'm really not sure because the Linux command line was really kind of brought up in an era where if you ever touch the file, that the last date is updated, and there's an entire command for that called touch. That even if you didn't make any changes to it, you could go and touch that file, and the date would be updated. And this is for the actual opposite of what Jeff is talking about. It's so it could remind, the 12 admins that touched that file that, yes, someone did touch that file on January 1st of 1999 or whatever at noon, right? So I don't know. There's got to be a way to do it that's better than having to use grsync or rsync. to kind of band-aid the solution. So I don't know. I'll take a look. Maybe I can figure something out for us, Jeff. All right. And Moss is brave enough to take on Larry Murphy.
Come on, Larry, I can handle you. Larry Murphy writes, "Hi all. To me, an OS is a tool, and as a tool, I use what works for me. I started with Windows 98 and upgraded to Windows ME. I was into desktop publishing as an interest, not as work. I purchased Windows Picture It wouldn't install. Even Microsoft Text couldn't get it to install. Well, that's because it was ME. They gave me my full purchase price plus paid for shipping. In their attempt to install it, they had me delete all my Microsoft extras like Word. That was a blessing in disguise. I found WordPerfect by Corel and the Print Shop Pro Publisher by Broderbund. WordPerfect came with another CD called Corel Linux. That was my first encounter with Linux. It worked well and I liked it, but it didn't do all that I wanted, so I stayed with Windows, but I always had other hard drives with Linux on them. There were always things I liked about Windows and things I didn't, same with Linux. I tried many different distros trying to see if I liked one better than another. Included in the many were Caldera, Red Hat, Debian, Mandrake, and Gen 2. Then I got a package of CDs in the mail. The CDs were a new company called Ubuntu. Ubuntu was at that time the simplest to install and worked well, but it still didn't do all I wanted. Then Linux Mint came along. I installed Linux Mint 5 and really liked it, but it still wasn't user-friendly for desktop publishing. I was installing Mint on friends and family PCs that had lesser needs than me. I was still using Windows 7 and finally upgraded to Windows 10. It was okay for a while, but then it didn't want to update at all. I decided to go back to Win 7 in January 2019, knowing that next January Windows 7 would hit end of life. When I used Robo Linux, they were big on VirtualBox. I took a spare hard drive and installed Mint 19.0 Mate on it. It worked great. Then I installed VirtualBox with Windows XP. It did all I wanted. It's stable and runs great. I remember when on Windows installing graphics drivers could be a nightmare. Sometimes, as I said before, not even Windows' own software would install. There are many similarities and differences between Linux and Windows. I like both for different reasons. To me, if I go to France to live, I should learn French. By the same token, if I use Windows, I should and have learned Windows. If I use Linux, I should and have learned Linux. They are two similar but very different OSs. To me, I learn and use what works for me, and for me it is Linux Mint 19.1 Mate. The community is fantastic, and I was always able to find what I needed. That being said, I could always find what I need in Windows as well, but the time to install needed software took me a good 2 days for Windows 7 and 2 to 3 days for Windows 10. Linux, I can do all my customizing in less than 4 hours. I really enjoy Mint. Thanks for your podcast. I listen to several others as well. You guys do yours very well and always good info. Thanks again for all your hard work, Larry Murphy.
Ah, Larry the pragmatist. I love it. And that just kind of reiterates the point that we were talking about earlier in the show, you know? Do all this stuff is just a tool. Use the tool, the right tool for the job. You wouldn't hammer in a nail with a screwdriver, just like you wouldn't use Linux for things that Windows is really good at. All right. Well, that's it for our vibration section. So let's head on to check this out. So we had, what was it, maybe 3 or so shows ago, we had shouted out a website that you could go to search out all 3 of the packaging solutions repositories, right? So you have AppImage, you have Flatpak, and you have Snap. And yeah, you can Snap search and you can Flatpak search, and then you can go to the AppImage site where they aggregate all of them. I forget the name of it, and search for them for yourself. Yeah, no, I'm not doing that. So the real way to do all of this, there is a guy that I've linked to in the check this out section of the show notes that created a package or a binary called CHOB, CHOB. And this is a cute little binary that you can download from his GitHub, stick it in whatever folder you want to stick it in, add the execute bit to it, and then CHOB search. This is awesome. It will check all three stores for you and then tell you which version is available in which stores. It gets really fun when CHOB finds the version for all three. So here's the deal. Go get this. It will make your life so simple if you're anything like me. I literally have app images in a binary directory in my home folder. I have Flatpak installed because Mint takes care of that for me. And I went out and installed Snapd. So I'm like the perfect customer for this particular binary. And my God, has it been a lifesaver. It is, I mean, every time I want to search for something, it saves me 5-10 minutes every single time. So go check it out. It is really nice. And then Moss has some interesting feedback.
And Jason Evangelo wrote about distrotest.net in Forbes Magazine Online. We have a link to that article in the show notes. And by writing about it, he crashed the site. Too many users for the site to handle it. It seems to be up to date, but the live distros aren't running. The scripts all need to be rewritten, and the web servers they need to really upgrade their web servers to be able to handle the traffic. But if you haven't checked out distrotest.net, and if it's not being managed by 15 million users at the same time, you can actually go to the site and see what a distro looks like while it's running. Been a great site for a long time. It just managed to overdo the user a bit.
Just shows you how good a following that Jason's managed to build up over the last few years when he's been talking about Linux.
Look, there is a community out there that is just hungry for people to advocate for them. And Jason's the one doing it. So obviously he's going to get really popular.
Yep, I agree. I've listened to him on...
I'm wondering if they aren't going to actually... if Jason's articles aren't going to really make that bump that we haven't seen in the adoption of Linux on the desktop.
Well, what have we said? The only thing Linux is missing. Everything else is good. There are things that are absolutely great about Linux, but nobody knows about it. And you know why? We don't advertise. Not that, we have an advertising group for like anything really, but because we don't advertise, people don't know about us. And Jason is doing that for us. So, yeah, thanks, Jason. You're awesome.
Yeah, Jason's even commented about that on several forums, that Linux publicity and that sucks, basically.
Well,
there was a long interview with him on Destination Linux one episode ago.
Yeah, well, when the only advertising we get is purism, that was contentious. And Josh is turning red, so you got to tell me about all this, all this that you're doing.
Yeah, so one of the things that were posted this week.
Your mic's gone again, Josh.
Technical difficulty. So while Josh fixes that up, Tony, tell me about you, and then we'll come right back around to Josh.
Okay. Well, earlier on in the show, I mentioned I'd been installing Windows 10 on a Dell machine. And while I was doing it, I found this cracking little utility that you can use in Linux to create a Windows 10 live USB flash drive. And it's called WoE USB. That's capital WOE USB.
Appropriately named.
Yes, and I've put a link in the show notes to it, and it actually came up when I flashed up another utility for creating flash drives, Etcher, and it actually suggested Etcher actually suggested using this utility to create the Windows disk because Etcher can't do it. But I've run it a couple of times and it works perfectly. There was a couple of times when initially it didn't work, and one of the issues is if you've not unmounted the disk, but the other one is if it doesn't like the partitioning of the disk, it won't write to it. So it might be handy to actually, obviously you're going to be wiping the drive anyway, to go into gparted and recreate the drive partition, wipe the existing partition, create a partition. What do they call it? Table. Create a partition table and then format it to FAT32. And I've found that solved the problem every time I've done it. So, but it's a great little utility, and like I say, I've installed the latest 1903 of the Windows 10 image, which now requires a minimum of 5 gig of disk space. So unless you've got a DVD that's dual layer and a dual layer writer, you can't create a DVD. So your only option may be to use USB. So yeah, it's great.
Awesome. And I think we're going to have to play some troubleshooting with Josh. I think he may have a bad cable is what he's thinking. So we're going to need to order him one. Right. So that'll be it for our check this out. And then we head on down to the announcements. So it looks like there's going to be no Tony Hughes because he has to take a vacation. Or, I'm sorry, a holiday. Where are you going? You got to tell me where you're going.
Going on a cruise to Iceland. Round via Southampton up to the Faroe Islands, then up to Iceland. Got 3 ports in Iceland, then back UK, going to Glasgow, then across to Belfast and do the Giant's Causeway, and then back to Southampton.
That sounds lovely. I'd love to take that cruise.
Yeah, take me next time.
No, I'm sorry, the baggage limit won't allow anyone stowing away.
Well, okay. I'm pretty small. I don't know. I can fit in some luggage.
I don't think I could swim to Blackpool anyhow.
The other thing is there may be no Joe next time. So, Joe, your payment is going to be, what the heck are you doing, man?
Yeah, well, I might end up working that weekend to cover some other people's shifts that are taking vacations. So I don't know if I'll be able to jump on the show or not, but I will definitely try. I also want to mention that with this show, there have been a lot of technical difficulties between Josh and myself, so it might require some extra editing to get everything up and running properly because my Audacity died. So I'm going to have to find I'll probably do either the YouTube or maybe the OBS recording and try and work with that. So it might be Wednesday before everything gets out since I'm doing the editing this time around.
True that. Okay. Well, we'll do what we can do. We'll figure it out.
And we appreciate all your hard work in fixing this.
I'm going to try.
We'll do our best. What are you going to do? All right, well then we just need to tell everybody where we can find each other. So, Bo, still hanging on. You can find him at the Undercast Network. Moss?
I'm here. I'm at Triad Bardic College, Peaceful Hippo, Distro Hoppers Digest, MeWe. My music is on Bandcamp, and Moss at mintcast.org.
And Tony Hughes, where can we get more of you?
Yeah, you can find me on Hacker Public Radio, and there's a link for me ID there. I do an occasional blog at tony-hughes.blogspot.com. I'm on Twitter at TonyH1212. You can obviously get me by th@mintcast.org and also distrohoppersdigest@gmail.com.
Nice. And you can find me at leochavez.org and at Leo Chavez on Twitter, and the Full Circle Weekly News Podcast, which will be coming out, I don't know, tomorrow-ish, something like that. I got to stay up late and get that done. You can find Josh at edublocks.org and at all_about_code on Twitter. And Joe, where can we get more of you?
Well, you can find me on my other shows. That's www.tllts.org. That's the Linux Link Tech Show. And I'm also on the Linux Lugcast, www.linuxlugcast.com. You can catch me on MeWe. You can email me at jb@mintcast.org, and maybe one of these days I'll actually give everybody the address to my blog.
Ah, okay. I'm going to have to go do some Googling on you now.
Yeah, good luck.
All right. Well, everybody can be found in Discord. Just add us if you're in one of the public channels, and most of us are on Telegram as well, so go find us there.
Don't forget Josh at edublocks.org and at All About Code on Twitter.
Oh, I got him. But now he got 2 shout-outs.
Oh, okay. Oh,
hey, he's worth 2
I'm not
shout-outs.
listening.
That's all right.
Don't
He's
listen
worth
to my
2.
own program. Come on now.
He's worth 2. That with all the work that he does in the background, he's worth 2, for sure. So now, since he's worth 3, we want to thank Josh for working on redesigning the website, setting up the YouTube and Twitch streams. That one's new. And providing a ton of technical help. Bytemark Hosting for providing the new hosting server for the website, which will roll out soon. We promise. Archive.org for hosting all of our audio files. The folks at Hacker Public Radio for this Mumble server that we're using to communicate. And of course, the Linux Mint development team for the fine distro we love to talk about and use.
Thanks, Clem.
Thanks, Clem.
Clem and Co.
This has been another episode of the mintCast podcast. The show notes for this episode are at mintcast.org. You can send us email at mintcast@mintcast.org. You can find more information about Linux Mint at www.linuxmint.com. You can follow both mintcast and Linux Mint on Twitter at mintcast and at Linux_Mint. Thanks to Mark Blasco at podcastthemes.com for our theme music, and thanks for listening to this episode of the mintCast.
Technical difficulties.
We live to fight another day.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Because it makes us human.